From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Monday, April the 29th, 2019. We open, of course, with the deadly shooting attack at a synagogue this past Shabbat that left one woman dead and several people injured. On Saturday morning, the last day of Passover, 19-year-old John Ernest entered the Chabad synagogue in Poway, California, and opened fire, killing 60-year-old Lori Gilbert Kay, who reportedly jumped in front of the congregation's Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein to shield him as Ernest began his attack. Gilbert Kay was shot several times and died at the scene. Goldstein was injured, one of his fingers shot off. Israeli congregant 34-year-old Almog Peretz was shot in the leg as he ran to get the children in the synagogue out of harm's way, including his 8-year-old Israeli niece, Noya Dahan, who sustained light injuries from shrapnel. A Border Patrol agent who attended the synagogue and another congregant who was an Army veteran were able to open fire and pursue Ernest, who fled and later turned himself in. Yesterday afternoon, Ernest was charged with murder. Police later found anti-Semitic remarks that Ernest had posted online. Rabbi Goldstein addressed a gathering of support and mourning yesterday near the synagogue, where he said that light was the only possible answer in the face of such devastating darkness.
We need to battle darkness with light. No matter how dark the world is, we need to think of light. A little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. A lot of light will push away much more. And the Rebbe would say, we all need to teach everyone, no matter what religion you're from, we need to do random acts of kindness. We need to tilt the scale. There's so much darkness now in the world, but you and I have the ability to change.
Jewish organizations expressed their horror and grief. Leaders of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, Chairman Arthur Stark and CEO Malcolm Hoenlein, noted that this should happen when Jews gathered to observe the final day of Passover, the holiday remembering our redemption from oppression, on a day when synagogues insert special prayers for those loved ones who have died, only deepens the sense of tragedy and outrage. The American Jewish Committee called for urgent action. In light of the tragedy, CEO David Harris said the need for beefed-up efforts to combat anti-Semitism in the United States should be abundantly clear. He called on any member of Congress who has not yet joined the bipartisan task force for combating anti-Semitism to consider doing so now. B'nai B'rith International said this kind of hatred must be met head-on, especially through increased vigilance and increased law enforcement monitoring and acting quickly to identify and stop those out there likely to commit these horrendous crimes. And by the way, the Associated Press reported today that the FBI told them it had received tips about a threatening social media post about 5 minutes before the Poway attack. But the tips did not offer specific information about who wrote the post or the location, and that the shooting happened before anything could be done. Also responding to the synagogue attack, U.S. President Donald Trump said our entire nation mourns the loss of life, prays for the wounded, and stands in solidarity with the Jewish community. He said we forcefully condemn the evil of anti-Semitism and hate, which must be defeated. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the Poway shooting an attack on the heart of the Jewish people. Well, after strong condemnation and outrage, the New York Times released an additional statement this weekend after publishing a shockingly anti-Semitic political cartoon featuring the American and Israeli leaders. The cartoon shows a blind President Trump wearing a kippah being led by Netanyahu, who is depicted as a guide dog wearing a Star of David collar. It appeared on Thursday in the opinion section of the international print edition of the paper. After a wave of outrage, the Times opinion department issued a statement on Saturday acknowledging that the image was offensive and, quote, included anti-Semitic tropes, blaming its publication on an error in judgment. After further outrage, the paper released another statement yesterday saying it was deeply sorry that the decision to publish the image was the product of, quote, a faulty process resulting in a single editor working without adequate oversight, adding that such imagery is always dangerous, and at a time when anti-Semitism is on the rise worldwide, it is all the more unacceptable. AJC CEO David Harris wrote on social media, while anti-Semitism is rising, synagogues are attacked and Jews killed, democratic Israel is demonized, and Jewish institutions are forced to bolster security, the paper of record pours oil on the fire. And in responding to the New York Times apology, Harris wrote, only time will tell if this is merely PR spin or a sincere effort to confront internal demons. B'nai B'rith International said merely apologizing is not enough. We call on the paper to review and revise its editorial processes so that blatantly anti-Semitic and racist content will not be given a platform by one of the most widely read newspapers in the world. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, demanded that the Times punish those responsible for publishing the cartoon, which he said could have been taken from the pages of Der Stürmer, the Nazi propaganda paper. A New York Times columnist, Bret Stephens, called the cartoon despicable. Writing an op-ed in response to it yesterday, Stephens said the publication of the cartoon was an astonishing act of ignorance of anti-Semitism. Stephens, imposing the question of how such blatant anti-Semitism could go undetected, wrote, so long as anti-Semitic arguments or images are framed, however speciously, as commentary about Israel, there will be a tendency to view them as a form of political opinion, not ethnic prejudice. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Monday, April the 29th. At 7 o'clock, it's The Wisdom of Dr. Ruth. At 7:30, documentary filmmaker Manfred Kirschheimer is in the spotlight on Jewish Cinematheque. At 8, Emory Professor of Jewish History and Holocaust Studies Deborah Lipstadt presents her view of anti-Semitism in America today at Temple Emmanuel in New York City. At 9 tonight, Mark Golub sits down with cabaret star Julie Budd, who talks about her long career and her Jewish identity on the Chaim. And at 10, the creators of the hit Netflix series Fauda speak at the 92nd Street Y. And coming up right after this newscast tonight, it's In the News with Mark Golub. And that's the JBS News update for Monday, April the 29th, 2019. I'm Teisha Bader.